Statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thank the UN Secretary-General's Envoy on Youth, Ms. Vikramana, and the other briefers for the views that they have expressed. We fully agree with the opinions that have been expressed about the need to pay proper attention to the subject of young people in the UN system and to resolve acute problems related to their socialization, which is what Ms. Vikramana is so successfully doing. We must all help her in doing so. But the question does arise, are we helping Ms. Vikramana in discussing today's subject for the third time now in the Security Council? Because the UN Security Council, in accordance with its mandate, is supposed to deal with matters of the maintenance of international peace and security. Bringing to the Security Council subjects that are not related to those tasks is hardly going to help improve the efficiency of its work and the effectiveness of its work, or have any added value for resolving pressing issues for young people. At the same time, we understand and we agree with the importance of including young people's issues on individual country subjects on the Security Council agenda, in particular taking into account the specific situation in African states where young people make up a substantial share of the population. As was said by the famous German poet and thinker Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, the fate of any nation at any age depends on the opinions of its young people under 25. However, discussing these subjects in isolation from the context only distracts the Council from resolving urgent problems that it is supposed to address. It seems particularly strange that a choice has been made to discuss these sorts of general questions against a backdrop of the blocking of subjects that are of direct interest to the Security Council, which is something that happens from time to time. Perhaps after I've said this, someone is going to try and suggest that for Russia, youth issues are not a priority. However, that's not the case. We are taking active measures at the state level to interact with young people. In 2014, the government of the Russian Federation adopted the basis for the state's youth policy up to 2025, which is being implemented at the federal, regional, and municipal levels. A key part of this strategy is the state creating the basic conditions for the fully fledged self-actualization and integration of young people in the social and political sphere and improving their socio-economic situation. We comprehensively support the development of youth civil society. We attach great importance to holding seminars and fora at the national and also at the international levels, helping to strengthen the peaceful and constructive potential of young people. In particular, in October 2017, we were pleased to host the 19th World Youth Festival in Sochi, in which more than 20,000 people from more than 180 countries participated. We are also advocate for the need to encourage peaceful youth organizations and for the development of intercultural and interreligious dialogue among the youth population. The important role that young people need to play in contemporary society, including through constructive participation in the building and sustaining of peace, is also reflected in Security Council Resolutions 2250 and 2419. Mr. President, Mr. Simpson's independent study gave us additional food for thought about the role of young people in efforts to prevent and resolve conflicts, and also underscored the importance of advancing a positive image of young people. At the same time, practically speaking, behind these signals we see that there is a need for states who have ended up in a conflict situation to pay due attention to the fight against poverty, illiteracy, and unemployment, which are the fundamental barriers to realizing young people's potential. By way of an example, we can look at the situation in Palestine, in particular the Gaza Strip, where the level of unemployment among young people is approaching 50%. Against this backdrop, and with the full stagnation of the Middle East peace process, a breeding ground is being formed for the spread of extremist ideas and the radicalization of society. If we look at the subject of young people in the context of the Security Council's job, then taking into account its mandate, this work should be focused on combating the challenges of extremism and terrorism. Undoubtedly, these phenomena are something that all people of all ages are exposed to. However, young people with their still nascent worldview and their search for self-identification, they are more vulnerable than others to this radical ideology. This factor, along with young people not having life experience, education, or prospects for self-actualization in countries with a negative socioeconomic situation or countries in a conflict situation, is something that extremist groups skillfully use to involve young people in unlawful activities. In their attempts to attract young people, extremists are increasingly using information and communication technologies, which requires a bolstering of collective efforts in the sphere of international information security. A sizable role in combating the radicalization of young people is played by regional organizations that have the necessary country expertise. We note the fruitful work in this area of the OSCE, the CSTO, and the SCO. Specific attention should be paid to the phenomenon of the use of radicalized young people for achieving domestic political purposes. In particular, this pertains to externally orchestrated processes aimed at overthrowing legitimate authorities under cover of slogans about democracy and human rights. It's important that the stated support of young leaders does not merge into preparing anti-government movements to overthrow in states that people don't like by external players. Mr. President, in conclusion, once again, I would like to underscore that in no case are we denigrating the importance of the subject of youth. We are convinced that there is great value in an in-depth discussion of youth-related aspects at specialized UN platforms that are specially designed to discuss education, employment, sustainable development, and other important subjects. The most comprehensive roadmap in the sphere of youth policy is the Youth Programme of Action, separate aspects of which are considered within the framework of the General Assembly, ECOSOC, and their relevant subsidiary organs. We are convinced that bringing or not bringing a subject to the Security Council should not be a criteria for how important or not important it is for the international community. It is much more important to strictly adhere to the existing division of labor within the UN system. If we do that, both the Security Council and young people will be winners. Because, as has been quite rightly noted by Christoph, people who are not necessarily so young will always find an opportunity to discuss the problems of young people. They don't need the Security Council to do that. Thank you for your attention.
Agradezco al representante de la Federación de Rusia y